There is one thing a market takes from you last, and it is the only thing worth protecting from the beginning. Not your capital. Capital comes and goes, and any honest speculator will tell you it goes more often than the books admit. Not your broker relationships, not your track record, not the reputation you spent years building. Those are the first things a bad market strips away, and they do not come back on your schedule. What survives the wreck, if anything does, is the knowledge of how you got wrecked. The understanding, if you were paying attention when it hurt most, of exactly which mistake opened the door and which habit let the loss run until it became a wound that would not close. That knowledge is not glamorous. It does not feel like an asset when you are sitting across from an empty account, but it is the only edge that cannot be taken from you by a flash crash, a margin call, a bad earnings surprise, or a market that decides overnight that everything you owned is worth 30% less than it was at yesterday's close. The practical application of this is straightforward, even if living it is not. Before you risk a single dollar, you need to know precisely, not approximately, why you are in a trade, what would tell you that you are wrong, and at what point you will act on that signal without negotiation. Not after one more day, not after you see how it opens tomorrow. At the point you defined before emotion had any vote in the matter. This is where Livermore's perspective still cuts through the noise of a modern market. He understood through repeated and expensive experience that the danger is never really the market. The market is just the mechanism. The danger is the story a trader tells himself about why the position is still fine, why this time the fundamentals will win out, why the stock is just resting. Every account that has ever gone to zero went there one rationalization at a time. Modern tools have not changed this. If anything, they have made it worse. You can now watch a losing position move against you in real time, tick by tick, on a phone in your pocket. You can read 100 opinions on a forum in the time it once took a man to walk to the ticker. More information faster has not produced more discipline. It has produced more reasons to hesitate when hesitation is the one thing you cannot afford. What survives the wreck is the knowledge of when to stop hesitating. Everything else is rebuilt from there. The first thing the modern market would hand a penniless speculator is rope. Plenty of it. A brokerage account opened in minutes with no minimum balance, fractional shares of anything on earth, options chains with expirations measured in hours, a phone that delivers 1,000 opinions before breakfast and calls all of them research. The infrastructure of speculation has never been more accessible, and that accessibility is precisely the danger, because easy entry has always been the enemy of serious thinking. A man stripped of his fortune but not his understanding would recognize this immediately. The noise level is extraordinary compared to any earlier era. Every platform is engineered to keep you engaged, which is a polite word for keeping you trading. The data is real-time and infinite, which sounds like an advantage until you understand that most of what flows across a screen is not information at all. It is the emotional weather of millions of other participants, most of whom have no more idea what they are doing than the crowd that always gathered outside a bucket shop a century ago. The instrument has changed. Human nature has not moved an inch. What the modern market would do to a man starting from zero is test him at the lowest possible stakes to see whether he had truly learned anything or whether he only thought he had. This is where most people fail. They treat a small account as practice, as something that does not count, and so they take it less seriously than they would if real consequences were attached. But a man who has been completely wiped out understands that every dollar is real, that the habits you build on small stakes are the exact habits you will carry into large ones. Sloppiness at low stakes is not practice. It is rehearsal for a larger disaster. The modern environment adds a specific temptation that would have been invisible in any earlier era, leverage handed out cheerfully and cheaply, sometimes with a promotional tone, as though borrowing to speculate were a feature rather than a loaded weapon. Margin has always amplified both outcomes equally. It does not know which side you are on. And a man who once lost everything to a position that moved against him faster than he could respond would feel no nostalgia for leverage just because it had become more convenient to obtain. Starting from zero means starting from discipline, not ambition, Not a great trade idea. Discipline. Because without it, access to modern tools is not an advantage. It is simply a faster route to the same wreck he just climbed out of. There is a moment every trader who has been wiped out eventually reaches, and it is quieter than you might expect. The noise stops. The ticker stops mattering. What you are left with is the question of what you actually know that is worth anything, stripped of the account balance that used to make you feel like you knew it. Starting over from zero is not primarily a money problem, it is a clarity problem. Most people who lose everything go looking for a faster way back, and that is exactly what finishes them a second time. The instinct after a wreck is to press harder, take bigger swings, chase back the loss. That instinct is the enemy. It is the enemy dressed up as urgency, as necessity, as common sense. It is none of those things. The only principle that survives a total loss is the one that was never about the money in the first place. And that principle is this: protect what you have before you think about growing it. That sounds like a platitude until you're actually sitting with a small stake and the genuine knowledge that losing it means starting over again, from further behind, with less time and less resilience than you had before. So what does rebuilding actually look like in the world you and I live in right now? It starts with recognizing that modern markets offer something that would have seemed almost miraculous to anyone who had to scratch for a grubstake a century ago. Commission-free brokers, fractional shares, exchange-traded funds that give you exposure to entire sectors or indexes for a few dollars. The friction that once consumed a small trader before they could even get started has been nearly eliminated. That is genuinely useful. But it is useful in the same way a sharp blade is useful. The ease of entry means there is nothing mechanical standing between you and a bad decision. The protection has to come from inside. This is where the old thinking becomes a lens. Livermore understood that a small stake is not a handicap to be overcome by taking bigger risks. It is a constraint that demands discipline, not aggression. The size of your position must be calibrated to what you can afford to lose without being knocked out of the game entirely. If a single trade going wrong ends your participation, then the position was too large. Full stop. It does not matter how good the setup looked, the size was wrong. When you are rebuilding, every decision runs through one filter first. Does this keep me in the game if I am wrong? If the answer is no, you make the position smaller or you pass.